Hey, so this is a video showing the rough workflow that I used to get the wood from the Alan Wake 2 rifle to look like this. So this is going to be roughly how I created this, not exact one-to-one, but like an overall view of how I got the base wood um, that I used for the texturing. Yes, so when I started first looking at these references, not necessarily these ones, but wood in general for stocks, you kind of start to notice that it's kind of hard to get the grain in the wood to flow in a very realistic manner without having to resort to some tricks. And I think the main thing is if you start looking at the wood grain, you can kind of see that these tiny dots that you see here are the same dots that you see here. Well, in here you don't see a dot, you just see a line. So it's almost like um, if you were to look at this stock, if someone made like a cut right here, you would see lots of tiny dots, which means they are running across the entire piece of wood. And then when you start shaving the wood on the sides, you start to expose those long big streaks that are inside. So that's why in some areas you see like tiny dots, and then other areas you see like these lines. Um, Similar to this area where you see that grain. And then in this area you'll see the same but like long streaks. And can be a bit difficult to do this in 2D. So one thing that I did was I think by, I'm not sure if accident or something, I remember that I had seen an advanced wood shader in Max, um, which is this one. You you have a bunch of different presets that you can use. You have a lots of different mm, settings that you can change, and depending on the type of wood that you're going for, it's worth to note that maybe some of these settings might not be that useful, but in general, it's a good way to get a nice base texture for your Substance Painter file. So the way that I went about this is, so let's say that you have your iPoly, and if I just apply straight color, this is what we have. So then I think the thing that I did here, you create a physical material, and then you had OSL map, press advanced wood. And then there's output for diffuse color, roughness, and bump, which is what I did here. But then another thing that I did was I added UVW channel to the UVW slot because I wanted to also be able to tweak the way that the wood looks just by moving the gizmo, scaling, rotating the gizmo in a planar way. So for example, even though I can just change like scale here, for example, let's say that I do 0.2, like you start to see like the way that this looks, but you can also get like visible changes just by moving the gizmo for the UVW map, and then in real time you see the way that the wood is looking. So perhaps you're not enjoying the way that the settings are, the way that the wood is looking by just changing the settings in the shader. But then you can also come and start like playing with the way that the mapping is being done. And this is another extra layer of control that you have. You can also start like scaling and then rotating, basically trying to get as close to the reference as you can, but always with the thought that this isn't like the final texture. This is really just to give you like a base color map that you're going to use in Substance Painter for further tweaking and enhancement. So we got something like this. For example, we can, let's say, further scale this down to see how it looks. And then another thing that potentially we could do is just press the random seeds, see what happens. Maybe you'll get like a nice result. You know, something like this. There's another one here that I used for the for this video. Oops, let me put this in the bump. Okay, plug this here. This is another one, something that I was playing with just for the video. You can obviously do the same thing, play with the random seeds, all these different values. I don't think it's worth to go through every setting that exists here, because truth be told, I think really it's just a matter of playing with this and see what results you get and what looks good, and if it's something that is in line with the reference that you have. Plus, it's always a good way to learn about the software by just playing. So after you have something that you like, then you can just bake down the color information to your low poly, And the only thing that I think people should have in mind is that you have your low poly. This is actually being used in, I'm rendering in Arnold, but I think you potentially can also use the scanline renderer. Not sure, but in any case, if you have your low poly selected, you just go to the bake to texture, which is like a new method for baking maps in Max that they added. And since I'm using Arnold, I'm using the Arnold diffuse, this one. I set the file type to TGA, set my image size, the UV channel that I'm using on the low poly, which is 1. I think that I also had to change the rendering from GPU to CPU because it's more stable. Because right now I'm using GPU because it's faster for having like a almost real-time preview. But after you bake down these textures, you'll have roughly something like this, where you'll have the color information with seamless texture, diffuse texture, with all the lines and the grain of the wood flowing along the surface of the iPoly. So what I do afterwards, it's really just putting this in Painter. Usually this is just going to be like a base texture that I'll use on the bottom of my layer stack. Will further enhance the material with all the usuals, like gloss variation, fingerprint, like smudges, all those types of stuff. But I think I just want to show like how I go about doing this. So I'll just create like a base fill layer. I'll put the diffuse texture on the diffuse slot. Roughly put the glossiness to 0.75. Then I'll duplicate this layer and I'll add the same diffuse texture, but now to the glossiness and to the height. I put it in the height because I plan on using the height to normal. And the way to use that is you set the height information to 0%, and then on the height to normal filter, you just want to use the normal map channel, and I use these values 0.1 and 400 basically to say how much normal information the texture is going to have. I'm using a IPass on the glossiness channel because at the moment this is basically like a black and white version of the diffuse texture, but being applied on the glossiness channel. So what I do is I apply a IPass filter to the gloss, and then I'll tweak the levels. So for example, if I turn these two, you'll see how matte this looks which could be something that you're going for. So height to normal, I pass, and then glossiness. I do a color balance on the diffuse as well to get it more like go from like this reddish hue to a more like yellow. And then I just bump the diffuse a bit. So and then another trick that I use is adding a ambient occlusion channel to my file, because then I can add a fill layer. I set all my channels to pass through. I add a MetaFX HBAO, and then I put anchor point on top of my stack. This could even be turned off because we're actually just trying to use the information from the normal into our MetaFX HBAO, and then this is basically going to be used as a mask for the gloss channel, which is what I'm doing here. I'm filling the gloss channel with the anchor point that I created below, and I'm referencing the ambient occlusion, and the ambient occlusion and the gloss is being set to multiply to 50%. So when I go to my glossiness, I'm basically like increasing the contrast of the darker areas. So if I turn this like to 100, it looks like this. So essentially it's like the crevices of the grain, they're being like they're becoming more matte. Something like this. And because this is like a rather simple setup, you can copy this and create a new one with the other texture from the other wood shader that we created. Again, this is just a base diffuse for kickstarting your texturing. This isn't by any means of like a finished product, but it's a good base to start from. Let me just change. And then I made like a quick scene in Marmoset where I can see how this whole thing is looking. Oops. Yes. It looks, it's a good base to start from. It's very cool how you can see the grain. Perhaps it's too strong. Perhaps the grain needs to be more subtle, like the height information needs to be more subtle. But I mean, I hope you can see how this could be like a good way to to get like a nice wood base to start your texturing from, instead of just don't know, maybe triplanar projecting a wood texture that wouldn't really flow or look realistic with the grain going in weird directions. I mean, you can't really beat like 3D wood shaders when it comes to stuff like this. And I think one of the coolest things is that since this is a OSL shader, I think that it's quite possible that we can load this in Blender, for example. Yeah, so this is a OSL file. So I don't know where you would be able to find this file, but maybe on GitHub, the OSL, the advanced wood OSL is there somewhere. And then you could load this open shading language file in Blender, and then you'll be able to use the exact same shader and get the exact same result. So yeah, I hope this helps in any way, and yeah, see you guys.